Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, Reality Check. Thanks for watching and subscribe and all that. And today we're turning to a subject matter that I haven't talked much about on this show, but it's something that's interested me for actually many, many years. And maybe we'll get into some of my history of the secret space program and my investigations into it many, many decades ago. We are here with the guy that just went under the camera. There he is. As
Sorry about that, Jay.
Darcy Weir. Darcy is the director, filmmaker of the new show that's up on Amazon right now, Prime, Secret Space UFO Fastwalkers, and it's good. It's good. Uh, I I know a lot about the secret space program and the origins of it, and you did a really good job covering it, I have to say.
I appreciate that, Jay. Yeah, thanks for having me on. You're a friend, and I obviously, like all the work you've done in the past and stuff, and I'm excited to hear what you think about this latest film.
Well, I think that what you've done is go back to kind of the beginning and kind of show how these things happen. I really particularly like the part, I forget the guy's name now. It's an older interview, and the guy talks about looking at the lunar orbiter material and seeing the base. And that floored me actually. I gotta tell you, I I have examined the lunar orbiter material like hours, hundreds of hours, going over those images, and I've seen a lot of weird stuff. And I know that they kept a lot of weird stuff hidden from us. But if that's true, if there was a base there in 66, 67 when they did the lunar orbiter, that that means that they were up there like in the late 50s, early 60s.
Well, my opinion on that is that uh, whatever they saw was not theirs.
That's
That
kind of what I
if
was
there,
thinking.
yeah, if there was a base up there, it was some kind of relic civilization's base. Is kind of my theory on that. That you
Okay.
know maybe this is an ancient structure, and possibly, I mean, there's all kinds of authors and theorists that talk about anomalies on the moon, and there's even that famous book, "Who's on the Moon? Who's living on the
Yeah.
moon?"
Somebody else is on the moon by
Someone else is on the moon.
George
Yeah.
Leonard. Yeah.
And you see photos of what looks like rovers
Yep.
leaving tracks going down into craters and
Yep.
coming out and continuing on. And to me, that's like some kind of automaton, relic technology that's just on autopilot, that
Hmm.
is running around the surface of the moon, maybe going through underground structures and stuff, and
Yep.
milling about, so to speak, right? So
Yep.
um, I think if that case is true, where Carl Wolf,
Carl
uh,
Wolf. That's right.
yeah, had been working for the Air Force pretty much as a photographic uh, printer repairer, Xerox machines and all that stuff we have throughout offices now. But he was working in like an IT sort of role, fixing circuit boards and stuff back in the 60s for high res photo printers that were, telemetering data back in from the lunar orbiter. And
Right.
and they made these giant mosaics, and one of these guys pulled them over and said, "Look at this, we're finding structures on the backside of the moon." So I think I believe that testimony. I don't think he had any reason to lie about that, but you hear about astronauts too during the Apollo manned missions that remarked about uh, pyramid shaped mounds, and they heard sounds emitting in
Yeah,
space,
that's right.
only when they were on the dark side of the moon, on the far side. And um, that would lead somebody to think, if they're just using pure logic here, that something's over there that is emitting this noise, and we can't hear it on the side of the lunar surface that's facing Earth. So what's there? And we're hearing about bases and lights coming from the lunar surface and seeing that in pictures and stuff. I mean, something's going on.
Well, yeah, the Translunar Phenomena Report goes back several hundred years of astronomers witnessing all sorts of strange, weird stuff on the moon. And we're talking like legitimate, high quality scientists seeing things. So the moon is really, truly the weirdest place in the solar system. There's no doubt about it. And of course, if you wanted to watch us, or if the military wanted to watch the Earth, I mean, it is absolutely the best place to be. There's no doubt about it. And so
Yep.
you think there's how far, how advanced do you think they are? Our military, the secret space program, are they 50 years ahead of us? 100 years?
I'd say 50 years is pretty accurate. If you look at Ben Rich's comments, former
Yeah.
head of Lockheed Skunk Works, who's spoken quite profusely over the years with Jim Goodall, a spooky airplane military technician, Air Force. He installed telemetry systems on the Blackbird, the A-12, the CIA version of the SR-71. And he was really close with Ben Rich, and they had calls every month. And this is something that they spoke about quite often, about what they might be up to. Obviously, Ben couldn't say everything, but he just said to him, we have the technology to take ET home. Those type of comments. And it's we can't prove this, but if the former head of Lockheed is saying this type of stuff to Jim Goodall, and we actually have a letter in one of my other documentaries, Rise of the TR-3B, Secret Space UFOs, Rise of the TR-3B. And, Ben Rich wrote a letter back to, I think it was, what was his name? He was a model builder for some of the biggest companies that are building, spy planes and stuff in the United States, like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and stuff. I can't remember his name. I want to say like something like Colin Andrews or something, but I know that that's the crop circle guy. Anyways, he wrote, Jim and this guy were pen pals with, and just friends with Ben Rich, and Ben Rich wrote a letter back to this guy saying, look, like, UFOs are both ours and theirs, and I believe some of these are considered unfunded opportunities. And he underlined U, the F, and the O. Meaning, what does that mean? Cryptically, uh, in code words, he's saying UFOs are sometimes not funded by us. We're given them, or we find them, or they're from somewhere else. So I think that we have been on a pursuit to reverse engineer anti-gravity and propulsion systems that are not fossil fuel based. And I think the TR-3B doc is kind of trying to highlight the epic pursuit of being, the top of the aerospace game in the world in the United States through companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. And we do have evidence of like the TR-3A, which some people say TR means tactical reconnaissance. And this was a black manta, like a triangular black shaped craft that could fly at incredible speeds. And it's published in Popular Magazine, Popular Mechanics.
Yep.
And, this was able to assist in targeting and apparently deploy missile-based attacks on Iraq. They were even using it in the Gulf War. So if you think about the TR-3A being a real thing and the rumored TR-3B being kind of like the anti-gravitic version of that, but also being massive and meant for equipment and crew carrying into space for a
Yeah.
secret space program, I think it's very possible. I mean, these things were supposed, based on Edgar Rothschild Foucher's testimony, these triangles, black triangles, were supposed to run on a magnetic field disruptor, which eliminated about 98% of the structure's weight. And then, you could levitate into space and carry a tank and an apartment's worth of people. So they had to have been, based on that description, it was supposed to be a massive craft, right? And I talked to another individual who I can't speak his name, who works in the aerospace industry and was best friends with Edgar Rothschild Foucher before he passed away. And this guy, who's still alive today, he's close to, he's a little bit older than me. He says that what he confirmed with Edgar was that the TR-3B had its maiden flight in 1979. So 1979 is not that long ago for some of us, but I don't think we had, if you believe that story, then I don't think the secret space program really was as advanced and underway until like the mid 80s and later on.
When Reagan.
And that fits perfectly with,
Yep.
Reagan's Star Wars program and his interest to mobilize, weaponry and protect outer space. So it does fall in line with that. The maiden flight, if it was 1979, it doesn't mean that it was actually fully capable of doing all the things it was sought after to do in 1979. It just meant that they were starting to make real
Program.
progress with this,
Yeah.
with the magnetic field disruptor technology.
I actually think I saw one once. I was near Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, up in the mountains, and it was a beautiful night, probably about 2 a.m, and just I was looking up at the stars and laying on a lounge outside, and I saw a star blink out and come back on, go out, come back on, and I saw another one do it, and so it kind of came out of my stupor and stood up, started looking at it, and I could see the triangle shape as it was going by, but it was completely black. All I could see was the shape if I really stared at it. And the reason I saw it was because there was this thin, wispy, I now know it's plasma. Then I didn't know what it was, but it was like a smoke a little bit on the edge coming off of it, right? Just a little bit of distortion, right? The distortion is actually the best word to use for it, right on the edge of it. And I looked at it, and it was not going fast, going maybe a little bit faster than a jet would. And I got to watch it for at least 4 or 5 minutes, blinking out the stars and going across the night sky. And I thought, here I am, like 4 miles away from one of the most important Air Force bases in the United States. The whole entire West Coast is ruled by Vandenberg, right? And no planes are being scrambled. Nothing is being done. There's this thing up there, super huge. And I thought, okay, they know about it, obviously.
I mean, if you talk to guys like Michael Schratt,
Yeah.
he says that the amount of testimony where people have seen these triangles flying and they see that kind of like gaseous looking like waviness on the
Yeah.
edge
Yeah.
as
It's
it floats
waviness is the
by.
best way to describe it.
Yeah. It's almost like this like electric discharge that looks like
Hmm.
some kind of, you know, uh wavy corona that's
Yeah,
being caused at the edge of the
that's exactly right.
craft.
Because the stars would distort, just like you see with heat waves rising up off of the ground on the desert. That's what it looked like. The star was distorting in the when you saw the rim or the edge of the thing. So
Yep.
that must be the electrogravitics or something, or we don't know.
Something at the edge of the craft that, yeah, kind of creates almost like a gravitational wave that the craft then just kind of rides on for free, no gas. So
Yeah, I'd like to have one of those.
yeah, I
You
think
know,
everybody wants one of those.
who's the guy that owns Skinwalker Ranch? The rich guy, Bigelow. Um, I
Oh,
was
he sold it to Brendan Fugel,
Yes, he did.
but
I
Robert
was
Bigelow
talking to
was
Jordan Maxwell like maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and he said, "Oh well, Bigelow invited me out to his place near Vegas." And I said, "Did you go?" I go, "Yeah, of course I went." I said, "So what was it like?" Right? And he said, "Man, you wouldn't believe what he did." I said, "What's that?" He took me down into his special garage and he showed me his flying saucer.
what?
That's what he said.
Get out
I,
of here.
no, he said it was like 35 feet wide. He said it was polished aluminum. It looked like he gave a big, huge description of it. And when he told me that, it was right at that time that I was spending a lot of time with my night vision outside at night because I live high up in the mountains. And so I got a pretty good view of the night sky, better than almost anybody on Earth. And I started thinking, are these all these things that I'm seeing with my night vision flying around above me? Are those rich people?
Nah, I think like if Bigelow had a saucer, I mean, in my opinion, from the sort of secret space program, we've probably had different shapes and forms throughout the ages. So we
I
probably
agree.
started, yeah, like we probably did have saucer experiments at one point and then figured, nah, scrap that, let's make triangles. And I mean, how often do
Yep.
you hear of saucers today?
Never,
It's a form factor that's redundant now, right?
never
So I think like what you might, Jordan had seen was probably
a
a
prototype or something.
a prototype. Yeah, probably something that Bob just had in his basement as a big trinket of his collector's item. But
I'm
who knows if
sure.
it was even functioning, right? I don't
No,
think
he
you're
never saw it
allowed.
fly or anything. And
Yeah, I don't
I
think
don't think
you'd be
Robert said
allowed.
it did fly. I don't think he said anything. He just showed it to him. Right. So I think you're right. I think it's an artifact from probably the late 70s or early 70s that he got. Now they no longer need it. Now that they're, I had no idea that you're saying that. I had no idea the TR was that powerful. Now that I think about it, it was huge. What I was looking at was gigantic. So I mean, there's no way I can triangulate it. I don't know how I could do that to really tell you how big it was. But if you're saying that they can like take hundreds of people into them and tanks and trucks and well then that's it. You
It
don't need
was
anything else.
it was meant to be like kind of a super advanced shuttle. We had the STS missions that were the
Yep.
actual NASA shuttle program with Discovery and Endeavour, Columbia,
Atlantis.
Atlantis, like so many of these craft, and they are reusable spacecraft, right?
Right.
NASA had pioneered that in the open, in the public. But if you think of what the TR-3B was rumored to be, it was supposed to be a shuttle program for the military to
Right.
send heavy equipment and personnel to space and possibly build their own like secret space station and maybe use these types of craft to check out the solar system, right?
Yep.
But I mean, if you look at what the Air Force has today, they have the X-37B, and the X-37B is quite literally a super advanced shuttle that's reusable, like they can keep reusing it,
Yep.
and it goes into space for 400 days on end.
Yep.
Like, and it's autonomous. It
From
doesn't
the
even,
Vandenberg. They launch it from Vandenberg.
yeah. And I mean, where does that go? What does that
What
see?
is it doing?
What does it record, you know? And has it gone to Mars and back? I mean, we'll never know because that's Air Force, that's classified. It's not. And even my argument I make, even in my series with secret space UFOs, is that NASA classifies everything too. If it's deemed, you know, part of something that should be protected from the public.
All right. So this you open up a whole can of worms here. So we know from NASA's studies that you need to go into deep space, you're going to need 2 meters of material between you and outer space. And I'm talking like lead, something heavy that will absorb the radiation.
Van Allen radiation belt.
Yeah, all of that. But if you had, I mean, I really wonder how advanced this TR thing is. I really do, because I mean, if it can go into deep space and go to the moon and things, it might weigh like 100 tons.
Possibly. I mean, if you can reduce the weight of something by 98%, and it's, you know, got a slightly tweaked propulsion system that's partly hydrogen, partly anti-gravitic,
Yep.
I'm sure you can succeed in lifting thick lead-walled craft and
Then if
go
that's
all
if
around the
all of
solar
that's
system.
true, if that is all true, and I think you're right, it is true, then they can go into the solar system.
I don't know. I don't know if they can go into another solar system. You're talking about
No, into
intergalactic
our solar
travel.
system. They could,
Oh, for sure, for
yeah.
sure.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I think there's the opportunity there, even with the space shuttles. They have silica tiles that are on the bottom of them that are supposed to withstand the reentry.
yep,
You know, the inferno that is as a result of re-entering into the atmosphere that would burn up most craft, but they have these silica tiles that are like this thick,
yep.
black silica tiles all along the bottom. And you know, they do use gold and other really precious metals to line the inside of the spacecraft as well. And we know that there was gold used on the Apollo lander. Now I know that you don't think we landed on the lunar
I
surface,
said
but
that. Never said that. I said that what we saw was faked. I did not say we didn't go to the moon. I've
okay.
never said that.
Well,
I
I agree with
actually,
that.
I was told when in the early 90s, I was hanging out with Richard Hoagland, and we were going to Ames, Houston, went to all the NASA places and moved through all the archives. I
Yeah.
want to talk about something about there that I discovered as part of your film. Um, And you know, I went through all the archives, through everything. I mean, I really thoroughly went through NASA's archives. And Hoagland pissed everybody off so bad at NASA that they wouldn't basically talk to him. They had to let him in, but they kind of ignored him because he just pissed them off. He just had that prickly personality. But I was like kind of a stoic and quiet and just looking and not saying much. And so I was like their pet dog, you know. So I was young and they were like, you know, you're so cute. You're trying to find out what's going on with the lunar stuff. And one day I was talking to one of the guys really high up, and I said, off the record, you guys got like anything in secret that you're doing, right? I mean, is it everything we're looking at up front? Because it seems like, it seems to me like you got more going on than you're letting on. And he said straight up to me, he said, we were on the moon in the mid 60s. We've been to Mars. This is 30 years ago. We've been to Mars. And if you say anything, I'll just deny it. So, and I said, okay, thank
And
you.
who was that guy?
I'm not going to say his name, but he was a high up
Interesting.
guy, and it was so matter of fact that it kind of blew my mind, right? And then I looked up Project Horizon, of course, and I saw that the military was planning to do something. It would be like just like the military to, like, I don't know, take a bunch of POWs or something and use them as, right, as I mean, because a lot of people would die if you tried to put a base on the moon in the 1960s. I mean, they would die, just the radiation. You would
Mm.
go through hundreds of guys. You'd really have to wait until you had really sophisticated equipment like you're describing in order to do any of these things. I mean, you just can't do it in a crude way. It's just
Well,
can't.
apparently the ARV, if you believe that was an object that we were testing
Right?
out in space and airspace
Yeah.
above the Earth, um, people, Mark McCandlish said
Yeah.
that I think it was Mark Sorensen,
Right.
or so bad with the names these days, but the guy Brad Sorensen, who actually
Brad. Yeah.
did the tour of that facility and saw the three different sized ARVs that were from what looked like the 1960s.
Yep.
They were sprayed on the outside with this like lead paint. So maybe that was enough to insulate these crew members somewhat from radiation, although it's rumored that the people that even test flew those had health complications with
Yeah.
cancer. And that might have been also just from its propulsion system producing, some kind of radiation that causes cancer. So it might not even
Well,
been from
yeah, the way to
innate
get around
radiation in space.
the way to
But
get around the Van Allen belts is to just take off from Antarctica. So, I mean,
yeah, because it's the thinnest there,
yeah,
right?
there's no Van Allen belt there, so you're perfectly safe. So I'm pretty sure that I've talked to people who think that there's an underground secret space program going on near the South Pole, right? I
But
mean,
you know, one of the things though, Jay, if you do look at uh, Apollo 8, and on,
I have.
they did revolve around the planet. They orbited the planet for a little while until they didn't go right to the moon. So
No, in fact, Apollo
it
10,
is,
they went down, way down. And I've seen the actual 16 millimeter film through the window of Apollo 10 as they went way down and almost landed and then came back up. And there's all sorts of weird stuff in there. I
yeah,
mean, the ground there. I mean, like
but,
lots of weird stuff,
but they
straight
could have,
lines and squares. And
yeah, I'm just saying that they could have gotten around the Van Allen radiation belt by actually, when they're in orbit, starting to depart once they're above Antarctica and then going around from there. You know what I mean?
I've actually
It's
had
possible.
Apollo people argue that with me. I actually have. I've actually
Yeah.
said that they waited until they got to Antarctica and then they lifted out. And that's why you see them flying sideways on the launches.
Yeah.
The Apollo launches, they're all going that way because they're moving to an area that's safer for them to go.
Yeah.
And all of this is super top secret. The thing is that to get around the whole Van Allen problem, besides launching from Antarctica, is you just have to go fast. If you go really fast, then you're
It's limited radiation
yeah,
time.
you're in and out in a second or two, and that's it, and you're gone. So, and we don't know. We know the Van Allen belt is really radioactive, but well, deep space is really radioactive too, but not as radioactive as the Van Allen belt. So the Van Allen belt is
It's a
a very
hazardous
strange
play.
thing to
Yeah.
have around a planet, to be honest with you. It really is. It's a very odd thing to have. The fact that it's there is, it saved, we would not be here if it wasn't for the Van Allen belt. We'd be fried by the radiation coming in that's getting absorbed by the
Mm.
Van Allen belt. So, but anyway, let's get back to your film because it's more interesting. So you got, I like your take because you're saying that it really didn't get going until the mid 80s, which is what I think. I think it sputtered a lot up until that time. But once they had Reagan in office, he just put his weight behind it. And he had his own UFO encounter. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah. Jimmy
Yeah.
Carter.
Yeah. Yeah. An alien came out of a UFO and talked to Nancy and Ron. I mean,
And
Santa
then he has
Barbara.
that UN famous UN speech
Yeah,
where he says, I imagine how quickly we would all unite if we found out there was an alien threat to Earth. It's like, where did that come from? Is this guy even,
exactly.
did he just watch like the day the Earth stood still or something? Like, what's going on?
He was an interesting president, actually. And he gets more interesting as time goes on. He's like a bottle of wine. He gets better and better.
Yeah.
Especially his comments about the meeting with scientists in his diaries and things are really, really interesting. So,
Yeah.
so people have been photographing UFOs since the time that were invented. I mean, I have a famous photograph here in my house of a UFO right over this area that I live in 1919. The photograph was taken, and it's clearly an object, circular object, silvery in the sky. It's not a plasma being. It's solid object. It's not vibrating or anything. What's your opinion on all this? I mean, who
Well,
made,
look, who
who's
made
doing
that
this? Yeah, who's
craft?
doing this? Is this,
I
is this,
mean, we do have tales of paleo abductions, right? Like if
yeah.
you even look at the tale of Enoch,
Hmm.
he was taken to the heavens and spoke to gods, not one singular god, right? And
Yep.
this comes from the old Hebrew Bible. So pre, modern Christianity and stuff. And uh, if you believe in paleo abductions and you know I think it was H.G. Shaw even talked about he and his friend being uh, pulled by two entities that landed in a strange spherical craft and tried to abduct them
Yep.
back in the 1800s, right?
Yep.
This is before your photo. So we've had, tales of visits from others on our planet going back since the dawn of mankind
Yeah.
and strange ships, even the Sumerians called um, these rocket style ships that were landing in the ancient Babylonian and Sumerian times called shems, and
Yep.
a shem literally was an aircraft. It was something that went to the stars, and um, supposedly the Anunnaki used it, right? So and who were the Anunnaki? They were off-world beings. They weren't from Earth.
Yep.
So I think it's possible that we've had um, contact in the past, and we have gone through these kind of cataclysmic events where the Earth goes through a massive change, and we have a reset, and we suffer from cultural amnesia, and we try to piece it
Right.
together, but only, knowledge is power, right? And those that actually have the real knowledge hold all the power. They don't want everybody to have the same knowledge as them.
Well,
So I think the history is written by the victors and the people that want to hide the real history of where we came from and what's possibly out there in the universe. That's the real problem, in my opinion. And I think the picture in your house is indicative of a craft that probably isn't ours. It's probably from it's from beyond, and somebody was clever enough to take a quick photo to document that.
yeah. So there's this whole, layer of strangeness around the whole thing. Akhenaten um, was walking, down the Nile, and a craft came over his head and told him to start a new religion, right? And he clearly says it that it was a flying disc that told him to start this new religion, which he did start a new religion and killed a lot of people in the process. And over and over, I've done a whole study of this, is how um, I don't want to call it alien because I don't know what it is. The other, I call it the other, presence is kind of constantly manipulating us. I hate to say it, but all through history, I find the fingerprints of a constant manipulation by these. I don't know what they are. I don't think they're interdimensional. I think they're physical beings that are here somehow, and that we are being pushed in directions by them for reasons unknown.
Well, I mean, if you think about the idea of crypto terrestrials, Michael P. Masters, that type of theory, where we've
Yep.
got this future version of ourselves that's trying to correct the historical record by
Right.
sending crew members back in these
Yep.
ships and nudging us in a direction that's beneficial to their future. I mean, it's possible,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Or when these cataclysms have happened in the past, where uh, you know, the younger Dryas age, where there was massive um, floods across North America and everything changed, or there's these polar shifts or something like that. Um, Perhaps those that were the elite of the time were able to escape this disaster, and they continued, like a breakaway civilization, Richard Dolan calls it, that
Yep.
theory. They were able to continue in their evolution, their technological advancements, and watch the primitives ourselves restart. And they nudge us in the right direction if they want, or watch us, flounder if they want. So I think it's a little bit of both. Maybe it's
Well,
possible
the,
scientifically.
the Vedic texts say just that. The Vedic texts say that right before the sun exploded the last time, um, the elite built gigantic arcs. This is what the terms we're using, and went to a planet named Mahar, 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 and they waited out the catastrophe here on Earth until everything returned to somewhat normal, and then they came back, and they are the leaders of the world. And so, the Vedic text would agree with that analysis completely. And I would argue, because of my own personal work on the Cross of Henday, that they know that there is an imminent disaster now, and the secret space program is them doing this all over again.
I consider it entirely possible. I'm like, where is Marhar? Is that considered to be Mars, or
I
like
think
what?
it's Mars. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think they went underground on Mars. That would be safe enough. If you could get underground on Mars, you could get away from a coronal mass ejection and be safe. Earth,
Hmm.
well, because there's no oceans. So that's a big problem is the ejection coming, it hits the earth, and this side gets fried. The other side has all the water go over it. So the other side gets flooded, and it's like inevitable. I mean, the sun's going to burp. I mean, it does. And we know it. When I first started doing my research, I was called a doomsayer by NASA because I said that the sun was not a steady state star. It was a variable star, and that
Hmm.
we have historical proof of that. Now they completely agree. They've been
Yeah.
watching it now for 30 years, and they realize, holy crap, one day it's going to point the gun right at us and shoot it off, and it's going to be the same thing that hit the Earth in 1859. So, I think that that's what they're worried about more than anything else.
Yeah. I mean, if you're lucky enough, certain scientists will say that truth, and I
Yep.
was in university. I took geology 101, and we were learning about volcanoes and mantle, and how the crust, kind of the continental shelves collide with each other. One gets pushed under the other, and that mantle just eats up that crust that eventually goes towards the core. And I was saying to him, like, can a big piece of this crust fall off and fall towards the core and create, cataclysmic events? And he said, absolutely. Sometimes eruptions are caused by these types of massive, you know,
Yep.
collisions and breaks and stuff. And he said, like, we live in a chaos system. We don't live right now. We go through periods of stability, but this is a chaotic place. It's not, we've
That's right.
got every type of weather phenomenon to prove that sweep across the United States and other parts of the world: typhoons, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcano eruptions, you name it, and uh, tsunamis. And so obviously we don't live in the most stable environment. It's a beautiful planet. It's, definitely a sphere in my opinion. And yeah, we have to cover
Thank
that
you.
because I do get some wackadoos that follow me around and say, "Hey,
Same
he's a
here.
spear guy." I'm
Yeah,
like, "Come on, like, dude, just try not to talk about things you don't understand." But
exactly.
um, but we do live in a chaos system, and I think the solar system is most likely somewhat a chaos system,
It is.
right? It's
Yeah.
probably also full of instabilities. So this planet has been subjected to that, and probably other planets have as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a dangerous place, and we do get clobbered every once in a while. We have to climb out of the muck. So I'm not. I'm glad that there's somebody on Earth who wants to preserve everything by getting the hell out of Dodge before
Yeah,
it happens. So I'm not against it at all. In fact, I think it's a good idea. And the same thing with
me
the moon
too.
landings. By the way, I just want to clarify that. I think that the reason that they didn't want us to, the reason that they hid what was really going on is because they were using more advanced technologies than what we were shown at the time. So they wouldn't show it because the Russians would see it and our enemies would see it. And I think it's just something prosaic like that. I don't think there's like a gigantic conspiracy. I think the military said, we're not showing our stuff to anybody. Are you kidding me? And then said, okay, well, then hire Stanley and he can fake it. Yeah.
True. Oh, I love that theory. So I mean, like I'm reading this older book now written by Howard Blum,
Oh, I love
and
Howard Bloom.
yeah, great writer, and it's a nonfiction book called Out There, and
Yep.
you of course, if you just look back at Project Sign and then Project Grudge and Project
Yep.
Blue Book, they all kind of um, they all gave birth to each other, and
Right.
people think that those were the only studies happening at the time, but apparently even during Project Grudge, in 1948, there was another clandestine UFO program, a study going on. And actually, the first report that came back to the commander that was in charge of Project Grudge at the time said, okay, it's verifiable. These are non-human craft. They have to be of extraterrestrial origin. And he crossed that out and sent it back to the team, said, not appropriate, redo this. And that's how we came with the 1949 summation that it was mostly prosaic, and we still don't understand what it is. But if you just think about the space program with NASA and everything they were doing, from 1958, because
Yeah.
1958 they were NACA, which was
That's
started
right.
up with the Air Force,
Yeah.
and then it got switched to NASA in 1949. uh,
59.
59, sorry, 1958, 1959.
Yeah.
Then we get the X-15 missions, which are these, you know, rocket propelled jets that are launching off the wing of a modified B-2 bomber. Even back then, the astronauts, Joseph Walker and Robert White, I think I'm getting that, Robert Walker and Joe White, these guys are reporting UFOs.
Yep.
And there's a Pendage wind camera showing certain strange things flying off the edge of the X-15 missions. And the CIA documents that were the UFO dump from 2021, in January of 2021, that Trump asked all the agencies to give their research and papers on. I went through those, and in a earlier documentary in this series called Secret Space UFOs, NASA's First Missions, we go over those documents where all of these, researchers were writing to NASA and saying, can you please provide the X-15 mission photos and still images that showed these UFOs in which your two test pilots spoke of seeing and were told by NASA that it was part of their job to take more photos and footage of them when they saw them, and we're
Yeah.
talking about, uh, one of the astronauts said that he had 5 disc-shaped objects hovering above his X-15 craft when he was in, orbit, basically, when he was just outside the atmosphere.
Right.
So, even back then,
Yeah.
we're
That's late
seeing,
50s.
we're seeing these UFOs come up in early NASA space missions, and it's been like that throughout. I mean, we cover the Gemini space missions where you
Yeah.
have um what's his name?
Cooper.
Well, Cooper said that that he saw a UFO land at
Oh,
the
that's
test
right.
range, right?
Yeah.
But you have James McDivitt on Gemini
That's right.
4
McDivitt.
that
Right.
tracked a UFO. We
Yep.
have that for sure, pretty well documented. And then you have Frank Borman, Gemini 7, sees a UFO. And apparently on Gemini 10 and 11, they saw structures or weird things floating around with them. And Buzz Aldrin was on Gemini 11,
Yep.
before they started Apollo 11. Apollo manned missions, which
Yep.
went from Apollo 7 to the end, Apollo 17.
Yep.
But Apollo 1, obviously, loss of life with the first capsule. And the rest were just unmanned craft to make sure that they perfected that new spacecraft without risking any more lives. But you have so many documented anomalies in both photos, DAC
Definitely.
motion picture footage, as well as the transcripts that come out of these missions. And the
Absolutely.
transcripts were classified for 12 years,
Yeah.
right? Why would you if you're just a research organization and not just a scientific front, like the best and brightest in the public for the military, Navy and Air Force, and possibly intelligence agencies, then why would you classify your transcripts of astronauts talking about what they're seeing in space?
Yeah, I think that might be also one of the reasons why they lost all the data. I think they're hiding other stuff inside. There's stuff in the data that was revealing things that were going on, and they said, "Listen, we can't release this. We do. Anybody with half a brain will see what's going on here and what we're really doing, which is, of course, looking for these guys." And they, oh, we lost it all. Sorry about that. You know, and I had
Exactly.
talked to NASA about that, and I could tell that they were hiding something. I don't know what it was, but I said, "What? How can you lose all of this material?" And they're, "Oh, well, we had it in a McDonald's in Pasadena, and it burned down." And I was like, "Oh, come on, had it in an old McDonald's in Pasadena? That's what you're saying?" And they were really kind of not really very clear with what happened there. So I think that's also what's going on, and why NASA does what apparently looks like sloppy work, because that sloppiness then makes it easy to cover up and hide things and all that. By the
It's
way, we're getting
ridiculous.
one of these rainstorms right now over my head, which we never get any rain here, so I'm glad.
Hey, man. Yeah, get that grass growing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a cover up for sure. And it's a lazy cover up, because if you're going to tell me that taxpayers paid for, you know, billions upon billions of dollars, trillions at this point by
yeah,
today's inflated currency standards, or depreciated value of the US dollar, You're talking about space programs where every one of those documents and every one of those photos and reels of DAC motion picture footage was
Yeah.
worth hundreds of millions. And you just let that burn up mistakenly in some McDonald's? Like, come on. That should have been locked away in a vault, and it probably is locked away in a vault.
Yep.
And it's for, need to know only, for, people with the right clearance. Their eyes can be laid on that information, and them only.
Hey, well, listen, I'm going to have to go because the rain is coming down so hard. I can hardly keep this going, and we never get rain. So, but Darcy, it's been great to have you on. This show is Secret Space UFOs Fastwalker. It's on Prime. Well worth it. Great fun to watch. Has a lot of great people on it. Good footage. Good visuals. Very, very well done. I was really, really impressed. It really was as a fellow filmmaker. So,
Appreciate it, Jay. Thank you.
yeah. All right, everybody. Well, listen, thanks for watching. I'm Jay Weidner. This has been Reality Check, and we will be back. Thank you.